Okay. In light of certain information and arguments that have been made since my last video, which was a long time ago, I think it behooves me to offer a sincere and heartfelt apology to Hasan. I was wrong, spoke out of turn. It turns out there are three ways to lie very well. The best way, it turns out, is to just have people want to believe you. And then you can tell them anything that you want, and they'll have no choice. Because sunk cost fallacy. Or just if you can convince everyone to believe the lie that they have been told to them, you can get something else that you want, because then no one will have reason to object, because, well, if everyone believes the world is flat, I guess that makes it flat now, don't it? Worked for Galileo. Oh, wait. And I think this is just accentuated by the fact that immediately after this great revelation, we find out that Hasan is trying to pull a stolen valor on poverty, which is actually really, really common among the champagne socialists, as you will, which is something of a misnomer, because it turns out that apart from a very small portion of actual working class people who subscribe to this sort of ideology, virtually all the really famous ones who came to power, at least initially, silver spoons, just like repeatedly. Marx's family was loaded, and then he sponged off his buddy Engels. Lenin, lower Russian royalty, etc. down the line. Like, at least Stalin started as a relatively, lower class guy, but also he was notably more brutal than even Lenin, and he was apparently mostly just an opportunist. So there you go. The reason you have so many guys who have to live in lies like this is because they grow up in such relative privilege that their mistakes don't hurt them. They don't have to consistently make good choices, so they can make increasingly bad choices, and as long as they've been propped up the entire time, they don't pay for it. Good example I like to make of this is engineering versus economics. If you engineer, say, a submarine improperly, and then you go try to take a peek at the Titanic with it, it gets scrunched up like a soda can, instantly kills like 4 or 5, I can't remember if it was 6 people, something like that. And everyone understands instinctively, immediately, that was because their engineering ideas were bad. If you design a bridge improperly and it starts swaying with the wind and gets vibrating and falls to pieces and people go plummeting to their death, no one's going to say, well, that was the wind's fault. The wind is just the wind. You engineered it wrong, right? Then you go to Soviet Russia, and you've got this guy called Lysenko. I can't remember his first name. It's something, Russian, Igor or something like that. I've heard, but I remember Lysenko because it's a much more sensible word. He was one of their agriculture ministers, and he decided that surely if you plant crops according to socialist principles, all sorts of miraculous things would happen. You'd have fruit trees blooming in the middle of Siberia. You'd have rye turning into wheat and higher quality grains, because you have done all sorts of things that we now regard as madness. Like, he would dig furrows 5 feet deep, right? Or he'd just plant crops like straight in a row, no spacing in between any of them, because surely that will help them grow to have a very strong root system because of the struggle of reaching the surface, and they'll all share resources and like in species solidarity with each other, and tens of millions of people died. But nobody considers that a problem with the ideology which informed this very poor decision, because it's not like a direct line. It's not your fault. It's not their fault that it happened. It's your fault for not believing in it hard enough. You can't believe in engineering hard enough to make it work. We are not Warhammer 40k orcs. Red doesn't make it go faster. Sorry. I wish it did. And then, of course, he just immediately gets bodied in the Twitter community notes. I'm not going to call it X. Sorry. I'm sorry, Elon. Because he's made all these different various statements about how he grew up, his father was a successful, wealthy businessman. His mother was a landlord. He graduated college and just immediately got a job with his uncle, Cenk Uygur, who runs the Young Turks, which is basically the biggest independent news org in the United States. That's not like, corporate, CBS, NBC, etc. Guy never had to struggle, probably never even filled out a job application in good faith in his entire life. I filled out dozens. So, I filled out at least 6 or 7 last time a place I was working at went under. Printing's unfortunately not a very thriving business nowadays. And it's full disclosure, I grew up solidly middle class. Rural middle class, but still. Dad was a police officer, state trooper. Mom either stayed home or did odd jobs. She was a cashier for a bit. She did 911 dispatch. She was a cook, that sort of thing. Didn't really, grow up wanting much, but weren't really healthy enough to afford many luxuries. I got a Nintendo, but I got that for Christmas. When I got my SNES, I had to sell off most of my old Nintendo stuff. Half those games, if they weren't like a birthday present, they were by my birthday money or allowance. I maybe got 2-3 new games a year, maybe. Which is, not exorbitant, but it's also, not, hurting much, right? Finally got a first PC was a Pentium 75. Didn't get that until I was in late middle school. But, it was just slightly behind the times. We didn't have a Tandy, had Tandies at school, etc., right? So I'm not coming out here and saying I'm super poor, grew up, destitute. I had a lot of friends who were much worse off than we were, so I've seen firsthand what that is, and nothing but respect for those guys. But when I was in community college, I was washing dishes. Whenever I was at actual college, I had a job on campus sorting mail that needed to make some money, right? Got out of college, immediately into the maw of the 2007 housing crisis, so nobody was hiring. 2008. I graduated winter of 2007, and then it was just boom right there, right? So got a job at a factory because I needed to do something. Lived like a monk, paid my student loans off in about 3.5 years. I'm not going to go completely boomer on you and say, why can't you kids nowadays manage that? Because this was, like I said, back in 2007, 2008. It was expensive back then, but it wasn't as expensive as it is now. So you guys are admittedly in a harder position than I was. But then, got a job doing order picking at a warehouse. After that, did another stint at a factory. That print plant, that place went under. I'm currently at another factory job, and frankly, I much prefer being blue collar to what they were very intentionally pushing me towards in college, which was to be a therapist. And no, I'm not all that great with people, to be honest. I get by, but I don't think I can be fixing anybody else's problems. So, yeah, I think I'm going to just basically wrap that up here. You just got to bear in mind that you can tell all sorts of fibs as long as you can't be fact checked, nobody wants to fact check you, or people actively want to negatively fact check you and not think through what they're seeing with their own eyes. And just as a good example of that, if you were training your dog to sit in one place with the constant threat of negative reinforcement, and you suddenly had people watching you to make sure you couldn't use that negative reinforcement, where would the dog be? Not in place. Ever since October 7th, where has Kaya been? Not in place. So I guess if you want to just keep believing this coming out of Hasan, that's on your soul, buddy, not mine.